Hi everybody, this is Peter Wilson from Grace Waves Devotional, coming to you again from Manchester in the UK. And we've been looking at this series, Breaking Free from Unforgiveness. Today we're going to look at part 5. Let's go into it straight away. And I want to talk about the importance of boundaries. The importance of boundaries. Today we want to look at the place of boundaries when it comes to forgiveness. In the Christians I've worked with, either in counselling or mentoring, it has to be said that overwhelmingly they have no understanding of the subject of boundaries. And this is why their relationships are fraught with tension, strife, and breakdown. So, what are boundaries and how do they work? Well, first of all, we must establish that boundaries have not come out of the self-help movement or a counselling stroke therapy manual. No, it is God himself who created boundaries, and you'll find them all over the Bible once you understand what boundaries are. Therefore, boundaries are God-given in order to develop healthy relationships. And we shall see that both God the Father and God the Son frequently used boundaries in their relationships. So let's look at the Father in the way he used boundaries. Genesis 1 verses 9 and 10 says, "Then God said, let the waters under the heavens be gathered together in one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters he called seas. And God saw that it was good." So once God had established the dry land by commanding the seas to fall back and allowing the dry land to appear, how did God manage to prevent the waters from flooding back over the dry land? The answer is simple. He put a boundary in place to prevent the land being flooded again. Job 38 verses 8 to 11 says, "Who shut in the sea with doors when it burst forth and issued from the womb? When I fixed my limit for it and said, this far you may come, but no further, and here your proud waves must stop." And the word limit there in Hebrew, it means a boundary. So it should read, "When I fixed my boundary for it and said, this far you may come, but no further, and here your proud waves must stop." This is where we get the expression from, drawing a line in the sand. God set the boundary for the sea by drawing a line in the sand and saying, "This far you may come, but no further, and here your proud waves must stop." Psalm 104 verse 9 backs this up by saying about the seas, "You have set a boundary that the seas may not pass over, that they may not return to cover the earth." Can you see that the boundary God put in place prevented the water from flooding the dry land again? Think of the catastrophe that this prevented. You too can prevent catastrophes from happening in your relationships by putting boundaries into place. So, your closest relationships are amongst family, husband and wife, parents and children, brothers and sisters. This is also true in the local church. This is the place where we are to develop close, intimate, meaningful relationships. However, to develop deep relationships with each other, it means we have to navigate the differences that exist between each other. the things that cause our different characters to clash. With the breakdown of the family units, especially in the West, we are seeing that the majority of people, Christians included, do not know what boundaries are or how to put them into practice in their relationships. This is why we have such a high divorce rate and why it is common today to see people marry 2, 3, 4, and 5 times. See, you are getting married multiple times because you keep repeating the same relationship mistakes. And you think the problem lies with your partner. No, 1,000 times no. The problem lies with you. You don't know how to set boundaries in your life. Hence, you have strife-filled relationships. And before I go any further, I'd like to recommend a book to you. It's a brilliant book. It's easy to understand and put into practice. And it's called Boundaries: When to Say Yes and How to Say No to Take Control of Your Life. You can buy it online on Amazon for about £11. It's a brilliant book. I strongly urge you to buy a copy, and it lays out in detail how to set proper boundaries in your life. So what are boundaries for, and how do we put them in place? We put boundaries in our lives for 2 reasons. Number 1, to protect ourselves from being hurt, abused, and controlled. Number 2, putting a boundary in place forces the other person to take responsibility for their dysfunctional, childish behavior. You see, we have to understand that when people transgress a boundary, it's because in that area they are still behaving like a child. They've not grown up in their emotions, and as a result, nobody has taught them. Their parents didn't teach them, no, Johnny, you can't cross that line. You can't say that to that other person. You can't do that to that other person. It's wrong. See, that's helping a child to put boundaries in place. And so when we see adults who transgress boundaries, they're being a child, they're being immature, and they're being a baby. And that's why you need to put a boundary in place to force them to take responsibility for their dysfunctional behavior. Jesus set boundaries. Remember the story when Jesus is going through Samaria with his disciples, and he turns to them and he says, I must go up to Jerusalem where I will be persecuted and messed around by the Pharisees, the Sadducees, and the high priests, and then I will be crucified. And immediately it said Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. Not so, Lord, you're not going up to Jerusalem, etc., etc. And immediately Jesus got right in Peter's face and he said to him, get behind me, Satan. You are an offense to me, for you are not mindful of the things of God, but the things of men. Jesus said that because he knew that Satan had used Peter as a vessel to attack Jesus. Why? He wanted to prevent Jesus from going to the cross. So Jesus had to deal with it in a very strong way and put a boundary in and say to Peter, get back. Don't cross this line. You're getting too close. You're invading my personal space. And once you know what boundaries are, you'll begin to see them all over the Bible. So let's now look at forgiveness with boundaries. The question is often asked, if I forgive, do I also have to continue to be friends with or work with the person who has hurt me? The short answer is no. You do not have to continue a relationship with the person who has hurt and abused you. So, for example, for some people, just to see the face of the person who has hurt them stirs up the strongest of emotions, such as anger, hatred, bitterness, fear, and unforgiveness. Hence, you may need either a time apart from the other person, or you may even need to sever that relationship completely and cut them out of your life. You may need a time apart from the other person to give time for your emotions to calm down. It's like the sand when it's stirred up on an ocean bed. It gives off this cloud of sand, and it takes a long time, doesn't it, for that sand to slowly settle down. And you may need that time apart for that to happen with your emotions. And I would recommend to you, if you've never set boundaries in your life before, to do so with a support group, or at the very least, another mature believer who can give you the advice and encouragement you need, not only in order to set boundaries, but to affirm those boundaries so that you can stand strong against the other person. If you go to a local church, you should be able to find somebody there. If not, pray and ask God to lead you to a counselor or a mentor or a mature believer who can help you. He will do that for you if you ask him. So how do we set a boundary then? Setting a boundary with another person is very simple. You simply choose a time when you can ask the other person if you can speak to them privately. Don't try and set a boundary when there's other people around. Sometimes you have to do that, but if possible, no. Get a place where you're at rest, you're at peace, and you can speak to them face to face in a proper manner. Then you can say to them, since we had our recent clash, I need to be able to have a time of healing. So for the time being, I just want you to know I will be giving our relationship a time of rest for healing to take place. I hope you can understand this and give me the space and time that I need. Now, the other person may come up with all sorts of reasons why they think you don't need a time apart, but you need to graciously stick to your decision and say, thank you for your words, but this is a decision I have made. And you are doing the right thing when you do that. You're not sinning. You're not doing the wrong thing. You're doing the right thing. Remember, Jesus and God the Father set boundaries in their lives. Or it may be you need to sever that relationship with the other person, in which case you could say, the words you spoke to me or the actions that you took have hurt me so deeply that I've made the decision to end our relationship. Now, the other person will not like it, but if you say it in a gracious manner and stick to your decision, you'll learn how to navigate that kind of a setup. You see, let me repeat again. You have every right to set boundaries, so don't let anybody persuade you otherwise. Let me give you an example. If I as a stranger knocked on your door, when you opened it, if I walked right past you into your house, what would you do? You'd say, hey, get out, or get out, or I'm calling the police. Why? I've transgressed your boundary by stepping over the threshold of your door. And people can see that straight away when you tell them, but they seem to have a blindness when it comes to doing the same thing with relationships. We need to wake up, folks. These are the things that destroy our relationships. I've worked with Christians, And when I bring up the subject of counselling, overwhelmingly, they haven't got a clue about them. Because you see, in the West, the family relationship is so broken down. We've lost these biblical truths of how to rebuild the walls of family. And boundaries plays a massive part in that. And the main issue in setting boundaries is that of fear. Fear of confronting others when we need to set boundaries. This is why we need a support group, or we need other people around us to give us courage to overcome the fear. And once you learn to confront your fears, you realize they melt away like butter on a hot sunny day. Once you learn how to set boundaries, you can quickly nip dysfunctional behavior in the bud by confronting that other person. And you will also learn that most of your relational problems have arisen because of your ignorance of boundaries, so that you can now start to build healthier friendships and relationships in your life. Going to leave it there today. I hope this has been some help to you, and we'll see you again next week. Have a great day. Bye-bye.